suckered into the Tom Thibodeau name, who, he had a good run in Chicago, but the same problems are still happening in Minnesota. He plays his starters too much, and he complains and whines. And I think that the Timberwolves were so desperate, and Thibodeau kind of felt like, oh, they're giving me the head coach and the GM? Oh, man, I'm going to walk in here and do whatever I want. Then he goes and trades Levine, Dunn, Markkanen for Butler for 1 year, and then you lose Butler.
Right.
And then you get rid of Nikolai Bielica because he doesn't want to play for you. So that's 5 players that you lose in 1 year. I mean, that's terrible.
Well, what's the common denominator in all this, though?
Tell me.
The guy above him. I mean, I think...
Layden?
No, I'm talking about our owner here.
Oh, Glenn Taylor? Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, this guy has just been flubbing it up for years and years and years. And obviously he doesn't know anything. And who knows how much he cares, but, I mean, he keeps making these bizarre decisions and stupid things. You just mark my words, I have a feeling that if he finishes anywhere near 500, he's our head coach next year.
Really?
I have this funny feeling he's going to be our coach. Well, what are they going to do with him if he doesn't get it? Are they going to fire him?
I think they'd probably put him, I don't know, actually, because if you get in a new guy, I want Freddie Hoiberg, to be completely honest with you. I think that I like Freddie. I don't know if you can move a head coach in Saunders after half a season and lower him down, because then guys might maybe look to him and there can be some leadership problems in there, because if Freddie Hoiberg's telling you one thing and then Saunders might say another, I think you kind of get pulled in different directions.
That's just it. Do you honestly see him firing? He puts Saunders in really a no-win situation right now, right? He threw him a big bone. Maybe his dad had it in his contract when he bought, when he came back. Who knows? But you honestly think he's going to fire Flip's kid? How bad is that going to look if he doesn't do very well?
It's sports. I get it.
He'll probably finish around 500, But I'm just saying, there's no way they're going to fire the guy. No. I'm saying he's our coach next year, no matter what.
Really? So even if they flame out and they miss out on the playoffs by a few games, you're going to bring him back?
Yeah, I think the problem is with them is they'll probably finish close to 500. I mean, they're going to win, just like, there are a few games under 500. They win some at home. Once in a while, they pick up a bone on the road. But other than that, I bet he's back. I don't think he's going to flub up. I think he'll probably finish 500, and that'll be, he'll be the hire. You just watch. It's the new thing. Young guy, decent look. It's just like the NFL. They're all copying each other.
Yeah.
Watch. Mark my words.
All right.
Coach next year.
Dave's first prediction of 2019 that Ryan Saunders, no matter what happens, is the Wolves' next year's head coach. Let's talk about the Vikes real quick. Offensive coordinator Kevin Stefanski, another good-looking guy, who's staying with the team, and will unfortunately have to go through Mike Zimmer and probably take heat after the first 2 weeks where he doesn't run the ball enough. But what are your thoughts on that, Dave?
Well, what's the whole thing? I mean, why was he out? I get that he went out and interviewed for. First of all, why is Cleveland interviewing him for a head coach position?
Yeah, what?
Rookie?
Yeah, what is that?
I didn't even know who the guy was a year ago. Why didn't Zim just? I like Zimmer's quote yesterday. It was like, well, he's been great and he works great with everyone, blah blah blah. Well, then why wasn't he our coordinator at the beginning of the year?
Exactly.
Politics, man. Zimmer, what an idiot to go out and hire this guy from the Eagles. He just blew the whole year. The guy should have been fired. I'm sorry.
Zimmer?
Too many mistakes, yes. Nobody goes through 2 offensive coordinators in 2 years.
He's been through like 4 or 5. I mean, Norv Turner, Pat Shurmur, DeFilippo. I mean, he's been through a lot.
Well, Shurmur left to be a coach, though, so he would have been back.
Which I had a problem with, by the way. I thought he totally checked out of the NFC Championship, but that's for another time and place. Let's go back to the hiring process, right? And I think you make a good point. If Stefanski was your guy, quote unquote, for this job, why are you interviewing guys? I think it's almost like, all right, well, we didn't like everyone else. I guess we're stuck with Kevin Stefanski. Do you get that feel a little?
Well, I do, absolutely, 100%. Unless there's some Rooney rule that says you gotta hire, or you gotta, go through and interview a few people. I don't know if that's in play for an offensive coordinator. Probably not. I think just head coaching, but they should have just given them the damn job the day after they lost to the Bears instead of all this pussyfooting around. I mean, there's no way he was getting that Browns job. What was that all about? It would have to be because of his looks. We got to hire a 35-year-old. I don't know. I just don't get it. I sense problems there, and I don't think Sam's going to be the answer. I think he's gone after next year. I just do.
So I was actually going back and forth with my dad about this. If Zimmer gets to the NFC Championship and gets blown out again, is he fired?
And if he would have, you're saying?
If Zimmer gets to the NFC Championship next year.
Oh, this next year.
And gets blown out, does he get fired?
No, not that game. But I don't see that happening. But no, I don't think so.
Because
not if he gets that far.
If you look at his track record, and it's not good in big games, Dave. When there are big games, national Troy and Joe Buck doing our games, big time games, he folds. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I think if he gets the NFC Championship next year and gets blown out, I think he should be gone. Because how many big games do you need for him to blow? And I'm not saying it's all his fault, but how many big spots are you going to let this guy lose you in? I mean, the Bear, you can't.
I agree.
Dave, you know what the discussion was at halftime against the Bears? Not what we can do better. It was this. It was, are they going to bench our Are they going to bench their starters? Because are you kidding me? That's your playoff team. You're worried about benching the that's what the Viking fans felt. That's what I felt. Oh my gosh, are they going to bench their starters? Because we have no chance to win at home against Mitchell Trubisky.
Right. I'd have to see the circumstances, but if he did make it that far next year and got blown out, it'd be an interesting call.
It's close.
This is his last contract year, and your guy Spielman too.
Yeah.
I think they're both up, but who's probably going to be the head coach though if he does get the hook?
Stefanski.
He's a hot-looking guy, Stefanski. Right?
Yeah, I guess so.
It's all a look thing for now. I mean, that's all the league wants. That's what the league's doing.
Quick thoughts on the national championship. Did you watch it? Did you enjoy it?
I did watch it. Yeah, I did. I'm glad because I like to see Saban take a beating like that. And, it was kind of fun to watch that quarterback for Clemson.
Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. And, boy, would he look good in purple in a couple of years.
Listen to this. This was my next scenario. How much longer does Kirk Cousins have on his contract?
2 years.
2 years. And what's Trevor Lawrence? Lawrence is a freshman right now.
2 more years.
Lawrence is a freshman right now, Dave. So if he plays his sophomore year and then his junior year and enters the draft, Vikes might have an opportunity.
Yeah, he's probably going to go number 1, though. If he gets any better, he's number 1. He'd be number 1 right now.
Yeah, he probably would. Drafted. That's what they're saying. Last thing. I think this offseason, we'll get into it more, obviously, but I just want to preface this. Zimmer's got to let go of one of his defensive guys. I'm done with Xavier Rhodes, to be completely honest with you. You got to trade Xavier Rhodes or a Griffin. To me, there's a couple of locks on this team that you can't trade away on defense. Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks, Daniil Hunter, Sheldon Richardson, and everyone else is up for grabs. Trey Waynes, see you later. Sindeo is going to get cut, or we're not going to re-sign him. Griffin, I think, can walk. Gone. And also Linville Joseph. I love Linville Joseph. Sorry.
Griffin, I don't think he's tradable after what happened last year. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to be going out after him. Plus, he came back, he didn't do anything. Rhodes, I mean, they could get something for him, but I know Rhodes bugs me too with the injury thing. But I mean, you need a corner, and they don't have anything on the other side. If you think Trey Waynes is going to get any better, you're smoking some good Rutgers pot up there. There's absolutely no way. I don't see it happening, but they got to go all offensive line. I don't see how they can do anything else at this point. And they need that third receiver, no doubt.
Yep.
But I don't know. It's going to be an interesting offseason there. We'll see what happens.
All right, Dave. Thank you always for joining the show. It's always a pleasure. We'll have more negative stuff for you next week.
All right. See you, buddy.
And we're joined now by Marcus Fuller of the Star Tribune. He writes for the Gopher basketball team. We welcome him on to the Strom Sports Show. Marcus, thank you so much for giving me the time.
Hey, no problem.
All right, so we got the 12-3 Gophers here. A big win against Wisconsin earlier in the week, and then they lay the egg against Maryland, 9 for 23 from the free throw line. Let's start with the Maryland game, then we'll move forward. What do you think went wrong in your eyes from the first half to the second half of this game?
Well, first half, I don't think too much went wrong. They had the 6-point lead at halftime. I think that they played pretty well defensively. There were some mishaps here and there, some foul trouble, but for the most part, in the first half, they had control. It's a very good Maryland team that right now I think is ranked, or in the standings, is third place in the Big Ten behind Michigan State and Michigan. So, you're going to have a 6-point lead at the half against Maryland. That's a pretty good deal. Second half, they started off pretty strong, extended that lead a little bit, but it kind of went south when Maryland went to the zone. They're not used to doing that. In fact, Mark Turgeon after the game talked about really that's the only time they've done primary zone all season.
Wow.
And we've seen, obviously, opponents do that in the past versus Minnesota and force them to shoot, and this time it worked. But again, I don't think this game was necessarily lost for the lack of outside shooting versus the zone. I think they did not, they weren't as aggressive offensively in the second half. They did miss free throws, obviously 14 missed free throws, but defensively, I think it's where they really, really got poor.
Yep.
When they started missing free throws and missing shots. They let Maryland shoot 70% in the second half. And you put all those things together, and it was still a close game midway through the second half, but they kind of let it get away from them.
Yeah, and I agree on your stance about you can't let your offense dictate your defense. You see it a lot in college. You see a lot in the pros. I mean, you're struggling from the line, 9 of 23, and that's where you get your first test of adversity for a team. And I totally felt the same way. It was like, as soon as they started missing free throws, their heads started going down. They started feeling sorry for themselves, and that's a recipe for disaster. Let's move to a player that I don't know what's going on with him, and that's Jordan Murphy, who was so dominant in the beginning of the year. He had 9 points versus Maryland, 5 points versus Wisconsin. I know he's getting into foul trouble, but what do you think's going on with Jordan Murphy?
I think this is you said he was dominant at the beginning of the year. I actually think that this has been a different year for him as far as being a go-to scorer. Hasn't been the same start to him, even when they were winning. Before Big Ten play, it hasn't been the same start for him offensively. He's been a different player this year. He's really relying on the interior, and not necessarily the go-to guy that he was last year. Last year you saw him pretty much the offense go through him quite a bit, and that was a lot had to do with Mason. Was dealing with injuries that we actually didn't know too much about, but at the end of the year, we realized that he had a hip injury. He wasn't himself. Obviously, Debris McBrayer and Amir Coffey were hurt, and Reggie Lynch was not there. So the offense really had to go through Jordan, and he figured out ways to try to score, and he was really carrying the team for quite a bit. This year, they have Amir and Dupree back. Daniel O'Toole's there in the paint. He's really a better low post scorer than Jordan is. So I think they're trying to figure out just how he fits, into the offense. He's tried to force a lot. I think he's tried to pass a lot more this year, out of double teams, and early on, I think that's where he made his biggest leap offensively. Was that he became a better passer. But then I think he got to forcing things a little bit too much, and now you're seeing a player who, again, foul trouble has a lot to do with it, but I think he really just doesn't know where he fits in the offense. I think Patino's going away from really running a lot of plays for him, and as I watched the Maryland game, they went through quite a few possessions without him even touching the ball in the post. He was drifting on the perimeter just to try to get the ball or to be involved with, the ball screens. And I just think it's up